exposed to biological weapons. The fear was groundless then. 51 years later, bioweapons have not yet been used against U.S. troops, but they have been against U.S. civilians. It is reasonable to believe they will be used again. It is 10 months since 2 hijacked planes brought down New York City's World Trade Center, and 9 months since a set of mailed envelopes loaded with finely milled anthrax accomplished the first fatal bioterrorist attack in American history on American soil. The 89 doctors, PhDs, veterinarians, and nurses in this EIS class applied for their jobs before the World Trade Center was attacked. They were offered their positions and accepted them months afterward, with the understanding that preparing for the possibility of terrorism would be part of the job from now on. "We can't prevent a terrorist attack," the instructor says, "but we can be better prepared. If you respond properly, you may save a lot of lives, including your own." But it was one thing to agree to be prepared and another to experience it. It is difficult to move in the billowy suits and impossible to laugh or catch someone else's eye through the tunnel vision of the faceplate. The loose boots make it hard to walk and impossible to run, even with the drill instructor shouting at their shoulder blades. One of the doctors is clenching his fist to control his anxiety. Another is breathing deeply to keep her rising claustrophobia under control. They have been on the job for 3 weeks. Over the instructor's shoulder, a window set into a door offers a glimpse of a disaster scene, a restaurant patio strewn with bodies. Through a second door, there is a second disaster scene, a subway platform, eerily deserted. Both rooms are stage sets, meant to provide practice in the possible varieties of disaster. They serve as a warning. The EIS officers must be prepared to combat terrorism, but they cannot predict where or how it will appear. Behind this training session lies an assumption. There will be another terrorist attack of some kind, and the EIS will be the ones who respond to it. They will have to calm panicked citizens, rally dazed medical personnel, and organize care of the victims. They will be the most knowledgeable people on the scene of a disaster, and they will have to take charge for the first few hours, or, if things go very badly, for the first few days. Until that happens, they will take up the daily jobs of disease detectives, racing to health problems that range from small clusters of foodborne illness to nationwide outbreaks of newly discovered pathogens. But first, they will spend a week in this disused army hospital, learning to rush toward threats that any sensible human would run from. "I cannot emphasize this enough. You are a target, a target, a target," their trainer tells them. "If they take you out, there will be no one to hold the line on whatever epidemic they have caused." 1. Training, July 2002, Atlanta. On a humid, sunny morning in July 2002, a group of 89 men and women met in a windowless auditorium in an unremarkable pale brick building set in a leafy suburban neighborhood in northeast Atlanta. The building, the street-side face of a sprawling warren of cubicles, laboratories, and conference rooms, was the headquarters of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, usually known as the CDC. The CDC is the public health agency for the federal government, the organization charged with identifying, tracking, and trying to prevent the infectious and chronic diseases, environmental hazards, and workplace dangers that may afflict Americans. At least, that was its official mission. Over its 56 years of existence, the CDC's duties, and even more, its reputation, had outgrown that dry description. Within its undistinguished 1960s-style architecture, made interesting only by a small marble bust of Hygeia, the Greek goddess of health, in front of the building and some expensive new laboratories rising behind it, worked people who were responsible for eradicating smallpox, the world's worst killer. Its scientists had identified Legionnaire's disease and hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, and had come face to face with Ebola virus and survived. Its researchers had taught third-world villagers low-cost, low-tech ways to protect their drinking water from terrifying parasites. Its acronym was recognized around the globe, often by people who had no idea what its initials meant. On the inside, the CDC was a combination of cumbersome bureaucracy, research university, idealistic nonprofit, and skunkworks. From the outside, it had acquired an unlikely glamour. Imagined versions of its researchers had been featured in movies and best-selling novels, usually to its employees' sour amusement, in far more plush surroundings than the ones they actually worked in. The group waiting in the auditorium on that hot July morning was feeling far from glamorous. Its members were variously nervous, excited, jet-lagged, grumpily undercaffeinated, appalled by the heat, anxious over a baby just dropped off for her first ever morning of daycare, and wondering, with a thrill of apprehension, what they had gotten themselves into. They were the newest cadre of recruits to the Epidemic Intelligence Service, the 51st entering class of the CDC's Rapid Reaction Force. They had agreed to trade 2 years of their careers for 2 years of intensive training in real-time disease detection. They had accepted, along with the training, a commitment to leave at a moment's notice for whatever outbreak needed them, whether it was a deadly new encephalitis on the far side of the planet or a church supper attack of diarrhea 1 state away. This was their first day. At the front of the auditorium, Polly Marchbanks, a silver-haired nurse and Ph.D., in a rainbow-striped dress, looked out at the recruits. "I advise you to fasten your seatbelts," she said. "This is going to be difficult." In the group that assembled in Atlanta that morning, the class of 2002, named by a quirk of CDC tradition for the year they enrolled rather than the year they would graduate, there were 32 men and 57 women. 75 Americans and 14 from other countries, 63 Caucasians, 14 Asians, 9 of African heritage, and 3 whose background was Spanish-speaking. The EIS is a corps of health professionals. It accepts doctors, dentists, PhDs in some disciplines, physician's assistants, nurses, and veterinarians. The class of 2002 included 56 physicians, 23 PhDs, 7 veterinarians, 2 nurses, a dentist, and for the first time, a lawyer. Each of them, to get their slot, had succeeded over at least 2 other applicants. 7 of them were Phi Beta Kappa members, 6 had been college athletes, and 4 were former Peace Corps volunteers. More than half of them were married or partnered. 1 was pregnant. 9 of them had children who were not yet walking. The signature tool of the EIS is epidemiology, the quantitative study of the distribution of disease in populations. Epidemiologists count cases of disease, discern whether there are trends, and devise strategies if the trends need to be reversed. Health workers' exposure to epidemiology varies with their professional training. A PhD in biostatistics might be steeped in it. A family practice physician might have taken 1 course in epidemiology early in medical school, and by the time he was done with residency, have forgotten everything he learned 5 years earlier. To make sure all its recruits know as much epidemiology as they need to, the CDC puts its new EIS members through what it politely calls a refresher. For 3 weeks, the group would cram the basics of finding cases, designing studies, and handling lab samples. In effect, they were beginning with boot camp Epi 101, 16 hours a day. When you arrive at an outbreak, you will find that you get very different reactions to your arrival, said Doug Hamilton, the EIS's chief. A tall, genial family physician and microbiologist who frequently wore Hawaiian shirts to the office. He had headed the EIS for 5 years. He was born the week the Corps was founded and joined it in 1991 after meeting an EIS member at his 20th high school reunion. You will get everything from, "This is my investigation, back off," to, "Thank God the cavalry has arrived." The new EIS members had been assigned seats in the auditorium at cafeteria-style tables arranged across its width. The seating was alphabetical by last name. It was an uncomplicated method for imposing order on a group that was wildly diverse. In the front row sat Karen Broder, a pediatrician from a medical family. Her father had been director of the National Cancer Institute, who had left private practice to join the EIS. She and her husband, an assistant professor at Emory University, next door to the CDC, had 2 sons who were 3.5 and 5 years old. She had been pregnant with the younger boy while she was a resident at Massachusetts.